Okay, morning everyone, happy Friday. Hopefully you can all hear me. Give me the thumbs up if you can. Excellent. All right, so my name's Owen Neal. I'm over from Seton Catholic College in Western Australia, and I've got the Deputy of Teaching and Learning with me, Campbell Brown, who's going to stand to my right. We're going to talk about increasing accessibility today and how to foster an inclusive classroom. So I'm going to try and run through an example from our school, a real example of how you can use some Microsoft tools to really help those kids in maybe foundations classes, but main classes, but also how they can move out to other classes. And anyone who has struggles with reading, creating confidently, addressing questions, you can use these tools for those kind of things. All right, so first of all, a bit of context. So really, when I think about the expectations that we've all got as teachers, that would be the top, and then realities down there at the bottom, and that's not to mention those kids in the middle of the road and those high flyers. We try and cater for every individual student in our class, but can we do that realistically? I don't think we can without some help. What I'm going to talk about today is the help that you guys can all use via some Microsoft tools. So our context, Seton Catholic College in WA, we've got about 12% of our students on what we call a curriculum access plan. But we're noticing a difference year on year of students coming in. Either more of students are diagnosed or we're not quite sure, but this year in year 7 we have 15% of our students on a cap. Yep. So in a normal classroom that might be 3 or 4 students. You might have students with an IEP. How do you cater for those students as well as catering to the needs of the middle group and also your high flyers at the top end? So I'm going to bring Campbell in now. He's going to talk a little bit about a perspective from the Deputy of Teaching and Learning and his kind of considerations on how we do this as a school.
I apologise, I'm losing my voice, so if this lasts 2 minutes, it might last 20 seconds. Look, my role as Deputy of Teaching and Learning, it's very much underpinned by our staff obviously being at the best in the classroom, and I always use the notion with our students of being safe and happy, and if they're safe and happy, they're going to learn. We worked out about 3 years ago that we don't ask the teachers that question enough, and in asking teachers that question, do you feel safe and happy? They're very happy, but they feel overwhelmed by the demands of teaching, and that demand of teaching then takes away from their effectiveness as teachers. So the example Owen's using here today is one of the absolute number one issues that teachers felt was obviously not allowing them to be at their best, was this notion of trying to provide access to and equity in a curriculum to all students. So in doing that, we worked with our educational psychologist and Owen and the IT team, and we've come up with some ideas, and this is one example of ways that we can adapt the classroom so that not just the teachers are feeling much happier, but also those students with learning needs are feeling safer in the classroom, not overwhelmed, not anxious, not feeling like they're not learning. And this particular example through Microsoft and the learning platform is not only working in the classroom at Seton, but it's making parents and students a lot happier as well. So Owen's going to run through it, and I'm happy to answer any questions at the end of the presentation. I've probably got to the end of my voice, so I'll pass you back to Owen, but thank you.
Thanks, Campbell. So the example I'm going to show, basically this class, we use a thing called Sector, and if any of you have seen Sector before, our learning management system, indicates any students who are on a plan with a green dot. You open this class up, 22 out of 23 students have got a green dot, so that's essentially what the teacher's working with. So trying to get to a point where this is led by the students, where the students can create their own learning experience rather than the teacher having to wander around and do that for them. But obviously for that to happen, we have to empower the teachers to be able to do that themselves. They bring it into the classroom, the kids pick up on that, and then we get to a point where the kids do it as second nature. So I'm going to show you now this kind of framework. First of all, I think this is great. This isn't mine. I'd advise anyone to get on the Microsoft Educator Community website. You can run through a course. It breaks it down into these 4 areas. How do we get the students to consume the content independently? So whatever we provide for them, they walk into the class, they're able to do that without us standing over their shoulder, without us having to point them in the right direction. Then how do we get them to create something confidently with what they've learned? There's lots of mediums for them to do that. I'm going to run through a few today. How do we get them then to work together? How can they collaborate with someone else in a different class who hasn't got the same struggles as them, who hasn't got the challenges with reading and writing? And finally, how do we get them to organize everything efficiently so it's all there? Okay, they don't have it at the bottom of a locker. The teacher can access it whenever they want. And it's there for them without really having to work too hard. All right. So I'm going to jump into the demo part of today, and I'll try and run through those 4 stages there that I've used as a framework and that you could use in your schools as well. And then I'll refresh at the end and see if you've got any questions. So first of all, we're going to have a look at OneNote. Now, the teacher I was working with was in year 7, and they basically had a persuasive writing unit they were working on where they looked at fairy tales, and they got the kids to analyze the kind of message in a fairy tale. What is it really saying? What does it teach kids? What kind of influence do these fairy tales have on children? And then they'd write an argument based on whether they think they're a good influence or a bad influence. So for these kids, they don't like to read. They really don't enjoy it, partly because it challenges them and they find it difficult. So I introduced them to Immersive Reader. So essentially with Immersive Reader, you click on View. There it is. It's inbuilt into the new OneNote app. You can put any PDF in there and it will pick up on any text and it will read it out to those students. So I'll show you how it looks. Okay, so they can jump down. You can get to any point in that text. Start from that point. You can have the word read aloud. In the settings, you can mess around with grammar. The kids can decide how big they want the text to be or the color of the background. Some of them prefer a colored background. They can change the font, and then they can change line focus. So say, for example, they want to go line by line. They hit play. Microsoft picks up on the text. Hope you can all hear that in a minute. Reading aloud.
And the family didn't have much food to eat.
You watch them in the classroom as soon as they get access to this. Off they go. They just love it. They're amazed by it. But we want them to get away from that. Oh wow, this is a cool IT tool, and this is just second nature. I struggle with reading. I'm going to read as I hear it aloud in my ears. Okay. So I'll quickly jump on to the next example. I'll just pause here. You can change the voice. There's various different accents, whatever the kids suit, and it suits to them. So it will remember their settings so that next time they come in, they can work with that. So those kids would access that story. Then they might have something to work on. And they might want to create something with what they've learned. So you can embed whatever sheet you've created or questions in there. They can have that read aloud. They can access the Word document by opening that up, and I'm going to show you how these tools work in Word. So they've listened to you talk, they've read through the story. Maybe they're trying to create something for themselves, but they can't understand the question they've been asked. They can use read aloud. But actually, once they've written something, once they've created an answer or a response to something, they can check their understanding and check whether it sounds right. So in terms of the creating independently, they can use that. So I'll run through how that works. In View, you've got Learning Tools. Open up the Learnings tool ribbon. Again, you've got line focus, page color. They can increase the text spacing. Hit read aloud.
Encounter new vocabulary or grow as readers. It can be a beneficial
and it'll read from any point in the text. So when they're kind of trying to consume that content that you've created for them, it helps. When they've created something themselves, they want to check their understanding, they want to check how things sound, they can use read aloud. Yep. But the point of me getting to this with the students in those classrooms, it wasn't easy, and I had to put a lot of time and effort in with the teacher first of all, where it got to the point that she was amazed by what these things could do, amazed at the reactions she saw on the students, that she wanted to implement that without me having to stand over her shoulder as head of ICT and say, this is what you should be using in your classroom. All right. So we've had a look at how they can consume content. Another idea to have a look at is Edge. So in Edge, if they click on Reading View, whatever text is on that website, it picks it up, and they've got access to read aloud. So if you click the 3 dots, again, they can have whatever text is on that website read aloud to them. So you want them to do some background investigation. You want them to have a read at what someone else has put in terms of an analysis of that fairy tale. They can go to the website. They know they can access read aloud. They're not going to struggle. They're not left there just thinking how to access this stuff. I don't know how to read it, and they give up. So in terms of consuming content, you've got OneNote, you've got Word, you've got Edge. They all run with the same suite of learning tools. It's all inbuilt. It's just a habit shift. They need to be aware of it being there, how it works, and then they can move on to using it, as I said, as second nature. So if we talk about creation, I've shown you Word, how they can create something in Word and have it read back to them. But another option is dictate. Now, you've all heard my accent, and you might think, I'm not really sure what this guy's saying half the time, but I've used dictation, and it actually picks up on what I say. That's the option up there. read into the microphone. If that student really struggles, they understand what's going on, they could probably have a conversation with you and explain things, but actually trying to put it down in writing is really difficult for them. They can use the dictate function, convert their speech to text, press read aloud, make sure it makes sense. There you go. They haven't had to actually physically type or write anything down. Yep. Another option in OneNote is asking the students to insert an audio recording. So it's an option I give students when they're doing a test. These students struggle to write. They can have the test read aloud to them. They can then audio record their voice. You can go back in and listen to that. You can add annotations in OneNote after they've done it. Okay? So just giving these students choices. I think that's what technology has done for us now, but we have to get to the point where it becomes second nature and they use it without any prompt from us. All right, we're going to have a look at a few collaboration things now. So first of all, you've got Word. So we all know that probably if you've used Google Docs or Word, you can share that, and we get our students to share that document with anyone they're working on in a group. In OneNote, you've got the collaboration space. So there's an area of OneNote where the students can work together. Again, they're using OneNote, they're using Word, they've got access to the whole suite of learning tools. Once they get in the habit and realize it's there, they're going to use it more often. Yep. If they want to create something with the learning, so they might have, as part of a group, they're giving you a response to fairy tales and whether they're a bad influence, they might want to create a sway, yep, which puts together their argument, their group's argument on what they think about fairy tales. Again, they can share that sway with their group. They can all work on it at the same time. They might want to draft their work in OneNote. They might want to draft their work in Word, use a suite of learning tools, and then move that information into the sway once they're finished. Okay? All right. Finally, we're going to look at organization. How can we get our students to organize efficiently? Well, again, we go back to OneNote. With these students, we find the days where we used to give them bits of paper, they get lost. Some of these students might use 2 or 3 different workbooks, and they open the page and they've got maths there, 3 pages down the line, they've got science, everything's all over the shop. You give them something like OneNote, you teach them on how it works, they're using it day in, day out, without having to try too hard. It's all there. The teacher wants to go in and access it at a time and a place that suits them. It's all there for them, which is one of the benefits. And that will happen once the teachers have said, once you empower teachers with this information, they see what it does, and that motivates them to bring it back to the classroom and use it. And you get to the point where someone like me, whose job it is to help teachers integrate this stuff, I don't have a lot of work to do because they're doing it for me, essentially. All right, I'll jump back in, and if anyone's got any questions, I can run through them at the end. So just to refresh your memory on how I kind of break this down, it's great to use this as a way to introduce this stuff to teachers, and you could run a session on each one of these things individually if you wanted to, but this really works for me in terms of how it might work in the classroom. First of all, getting those students to consume that content without you having to do anything. They create their own learning experience, they're empowered with the tools and how to use them. You just walk around and see how things are going and intervene when you need to intervene. But if we go back to before the advent of something like learning tools, those kids are sitting staring at a screen wondering what they do. Some of them might just get on with things and be kind of compliantly disengaged. Some of them might act out and play around because they're not sure what they should be doing. Who knows? Now they've got this tool, they use it, everything moves forward as it should. Secondly, how do they create confidently? So I showed you guys Word and OneNote and how they can use learning tools there. In terms of Sway, they can work together on a collaborative project in Sway where they get a different way to create something, think about design, how things look, but also collaborate with the people in their group. And they can do the background work in Word or in OneNote and make sure what they're actually putting into their finished article says what they want it to say. Finally, you've got organize efficiently. So in terms of students' work, how they gather that work, how they work through it, how the teacher accesses it, we found OneNote just makes a massive difference. We had a learner management system that allowed us to present content to our students, that allowed us to sequence lessons, but they couldn't do anything with what we put out there. OneNote means the students can have a copy of everything you put on there. They can store that in their own space. They can edit that work whenever they've copied it in. You can go and have a look at it at any time you want. You can add feedback. You can add comments. It ticks all the boxes in terms of a learning tool. And if you haven't used it, please have a look. And Learning Tools is there. It's across Edge. It's across Word. It's across OneNote. And as I've said, once the teachers and students see the power of it, it just becomes second nature and they begin to use it all the time. All right, I'm just about there and you can ask me any questions you might have. Now I've trialed this already. You're going to have to get really close, almost give me a cuddle if you want to scan that QR code. but you can take down that shortened link there and have a copy of those slides. I'll put this slide back in a second. At the very end, you've got lots of links there. There's links to lots of resources. There's links to the Microsoft Education community. All the stuff I've been talking about today, it's all out there. It's free. It's easy to access. You just have to put the time and effort into it and do that with your staff back at school. So I'll put that back there. If you type in the bit.ly link down at the bottom, or take a picture of it, you can access that at your leisure.